Light, dark. Chiaro, scuro. Spirit and substance. Shadow and sunlight. 17th century Amsterdam. Lining the canals were townhouses trimmed with gold. Dutch ships anchored in every world port to buy, and ships of all nations harbored in Amsterdam to sell. Her waterways led to all of northern Europe and Germany to the south. Merchants ruled. Commerce with exotic colonies bred a taste for opulence. It flared against the Dutch restraint. Houses lacked paintings. Almost everyone wanted a portrait. And for some years, one of the painters most sought after was Rembrandt van Rijn. Known for painterly skills, but also for capturing the inner drama of his subjects, staged in contrasts of light and dark. His own life was cast in extremes of shadow and light. Rembrandt's vivacious wife Saskia died only 8 years after their marriage. He sketched and painted her portrait hundreds of times. As he did his tenderly revered mother. The one-time favorite of a wealthy city turned to the richness and the drama of the New Testament. His models were beggars, people of the streets. Now, his neighbors, fellow players in a universal drama.
With the advantages of the example and instruction which you could have in Europe, you would be a valuable acquisition to the art, and one of the first painters in the world, provided you could receive these aids before it is too late in life, and before your manner and taste were corrupted or fixed by working in your little way at Boston.
An impressive letter to a young painter, and from the distinguished Sir Joshua Reynolds. Could he be right? John Singleton Copley loved his country, but he wanted the richer artistic influences of the old world. Besides, talk of revolution was everywhere. Political contests, he felt, were neither pleasing to an artist nor advantageous to art itself. In 1774, Copley left. It would make him a better painter, he thought. Sad for him. Sad for America. He never returned to his home. At 34, John Singleton Copley was already one of the best and most popular painters in the American colonies. The young American artist, John Trumbull, said of him, an elegant-looking man, dressed in fine maroon cloth, with gold buttons, this dazzling to my unpracticed eye, but his painting, the first I had ever seen deserving the name, riveted, absorbed my attention, and renewed my desires to enter upon such a pursuit. Copley had more work than he could do. Early in his career, he mastered the popular Rococo style, rich texture of laces and lush fabrics, empty faces. But like many pre-revolutionary Americans, Copley could not suppress his belief in individual and personal expression. Taxation without representation. Copley's father-in-law, an English merchant, was importing tea to America. Copley felt he could not speak out against his family, nor could he defend them. Seeking his artistic heritage, he sailed for Europe. It wasn't long before he became part of that heritage, a forerunner in the great Romantic movement. Still, the longer his self-imposed exile in England, the greater his loneliness. His children were his models. The commissions continued. But his greatest masterpieces were painted while memory and imagination were fresh. In his isolation in England, Copley worked harder to be America's first great painter. Poor America, he wrote, yet certain I am she will finally emerge from her present calamity and become a mighty empire. And it is a pleasing reflection that I shall stand amongst the first of the artists that shall have led the country to the knowledge and cultivation of the fine arts.
a likeness at a reasonable price are invited to call soon. Persons wishing a flat picture can have a likeness without shade or shadow at 1/4 price. William Pryor was but one of many self-appointed painters to the new republic. Some, like him, were prosperous and skilled. Painters by profession, following the ancient tradition of the limner. Others were just men and women who could turn a capable hand to many different tasks. Village artisans who were also farmers, housewives, school teachers, carpenters, jacks of all trade. Or itinerants, travelers, infected with the restless, exuberant spirit of early America. They would paint for lodging and a meal. Many remain unknown. All were academically untrained, but their eyes were sharp. James Bard spent a lifetime painting steamboats in New York. Shipbuilders admired his accuracy, claiming they could lay down the lines of a vessel from one of his paintings. In 1837, a visitor to America was struck by the manner in which the imaginative talent of the people had thrown itself forth into painting. The country seemed to swarm with painters, and they left a pictorial diary of our past. Side views and profiles of children at reduced prices. 1 hour sitting, $2.92, including frame and glass. Fancy portraits, including pets and other details, $25. Ralph Waldo Emerson expressed the spirit of many of these naive painters when he wrote, "I embrace the common. I explore and sit at the feet of the familiar." Give me insight into today, and you may have the antique and future worlds. Still others, poets and painters alike, saw visions of a future world in America. I see 1,000 kingdoms raised, cities and men numerous as sand upon the ocean shore. The Ohio then shall glide by many a town of note, and where the Mississippi stream by forests shaded now runs weeping on, cities shall grow, and states not less in fame than Greece and Rome.
Their days were filled with playing at country pleasures, flirtations on grassy banks, the innocent games of children, a life without care, one last idyllic before the nightmare started. The 6th and 7th decades of the 18th century, the time of which one survivor said, "He who did not live before the revolution does not know the sweetness of living." Sweet for the privileged few playing out their gallant fantasy, in which pleasure was the highest good, and delighting the eye, the highest art. To capture the spirit of this charmed circle, there was the work of Jean-Honoré Fragonard. Born in the south of France, in the perfume capital of Europe. Exuberant, graceful, charming. His art colored and shaped by an early love affair, not with a woman, but with a country. Italy is the land to love, a visitor has written. There is no place where mere living is such a luxury. Fragonard experienced that luxury and more. The pagan past which lent such richness and vitality to the present. In France, a bitter revolutionary brew was fermenting, but Fragonard had no taste for it, except for the simple life, that elusive ideal, borrowed from the philosophy of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Also from Rousseau, the inspiration for a tribute to Benjamin Franklin, revolutionary, noble product of the simple life of the New World. From the chivalrous Old World, from Orlando Furioso, the Renaissance romance, A fabulous horse leaps over ditch and river and stone and thicket, less like a noble charger than the very wind itself. Fragonard's portraits, too, were said to be done as if the wind had painted them. So swift and light was his touch. In the brushstrokes, a curious anticipation of modern painting. And the expression of an irrepressible spirit. Tenacious, too, surviving the revolution, outliving his own frivolous world, and finally, dying of a stroke while eating ice cream. About the time our Declaration of Independence was signed, Fragonard painted this engrossed young woman. The world did change radically with the birth of revolutions, but the vision that Fragonard captured of the sweetness of life is an ideal that remains.
Many are apt to picture Spain in their imaginations as a soft southern region. On the contrary, for the greater part, it is a stern, melancholy country, invariably silent and lonesome. Spanish landscape, inhuman scale and bleakness. Observed in 1829, 1 year after Goya's death, by Washington Irving, American writer and minister to Spain. Francisco Goya viewed Spain from the vantage point of a painter to the royal court, and this is what he observed. The world is a masquerade. All wish to appear what they are not. Painting the masqueraders was Goya's job, but under his brush, real people emerged from their ribbon and tinsel disguise. It was a desperate time. This masquerader in huntsman's costume was Carlos IV, King of Spain. It said that once every 24 hours he asked his villainous minister how things were going, and not waiting for an answer, went about his leisure for another day. His queen, they say, enlisted the same minister to father some of the royal children. North of the Pyrenees, the age of reason reigned. But in Spain, there was hunger and ignorance and corruption. And then Napoleon. Arthur Wellesley, terror gallorum, terror of the French. Arthur Wellesley, Duke of Wellington, sometime liberator of Madrid. But no liberation from misery, and enough terror for all. This I saw, said Francisco Goya. Andre Malraux said, Goya discovered his genius the day he gave up pleasing others. And he had pleased them. Goya had been ill, and now he was deaf. Inside his head, witches shrieked and nightmares unfolded. In the real world, monsters bred while reason slept and human folly reigned. But there were still portraits to be painted. A las 5 de la tarde. Eran las 5 en punto de la tarde. Un niño trajo la blanca sábana. A las 5 de la tarde. Una espuerta de cal ya prevenida. A las 5 de la tarde. At 5 in the afternoon, it was exactly 5 in the afternoon, a boy brought the white sheet. At 5 in the afternoon, a frail of lime ready prepared. At 5 in the afternoon, the rest was death, and death alone. At 5 in the afternoon, groups of silence in the corners. At 5 in the afternoon, and the bull alone with a high heart. At 5 in the afternoon, when the sweat of snow was coming. At 5 in the afternoon, when the bull ring was covered in iodine. At 5 in the afternoon, death laid eggs in the wound. At 5 in the afternoon. At 5 in the afternoon. Exactly at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
of light, city of dreams, a landscape for heroes, for cosmic visions and vast imaginings. Turner's mind and spirit claimed this uncharted territory as his own. It made of him a man not quite at ease in his own time and place. And it made his art a turning point, a redirection of the history of painting. Queen Victoria ascended the British throne and knighted certain respected artists. Joseph Mallord William Turner might have been Sir Joseph had he only conformed more consistently to contemporary standards and tastes. Instead, he remained Turner, member of the Royal Academy, designer of popular prints, a painter who received his share of commissions, but puzzling and unpredictable. A friend said of him, "I really do not understand his method of painting at all. His designs are grand, the effect in coloring natural, but his workmanship is the most abominable I ever saw, and some pieces of the picture you cannot make out at all." Turner was odd, saying unheard of things like, "Indistinctness is my forte," or "Always take advantage of an accident." More often than not, Turner would submit just a sketch on canvas to the Royal Academy's annual exhibition. A few days before the opening, when artists appeared in the exhibit hall to varnish their finished works, Turner also appeared, palette knife, fingers, and brushes, ready to create his work on the spot. A magician, performing his incantations in public. Oblivious to all who gathered to stare, he would work for hours without pause. The act of painting becoming the painting. And then, suddenly, this virtuoso performance would be over. The eccentric Mr. Turner would pack up and walk out without a word. The public at large had its fun with the performance and its results. Critics were even harsher. It is grievous to us to think of talent so mighty and so poetical running riot into such frenzies. The more grievous as we fear the talent is now past. The color, that of fireworks, rises almost to insanity and occasionally sinks to imbecility. He was far from a failure. Seascapes, landscapes, engravings, they sold. They gave him financial independence. It was just that, under this cloak of acceptability, Turner was an originator. And that left just a corner of his attention for the standards of the day. For example, the dog in this painting is a paper cutout added by another painter to give the work the obligatory focal point. Turner seemed to think it was not a bad idea, although he hadn't bothered to think of it himself. So he moved it a bit, touched it with dark paint, and left it. Turner moved toward the heart of his creativity, through something that looked like Impressionism but wasn't, and wouldn't be for another 30 years, close to the realm that the action painters of the mid-20th century would claim for their own. Today, our eyes take Turner's discoveries for granted. From color and light, a new visual language. Shortly before his death, Turner was asked why a large white star had been blotted out from one of his prints. He laughed ironically and said, "The stars, in their ways, are beyond my control and responsibility."
Years ago, Paris entered her most diverting age. Dance halls, the ballet, the races. Faced with such a dazzling and pleasant way of life, artists sought truth on sunny terraces. Edgar Degas never considered himself an impressionist, but he joined their discussions, supported them, and exhibited with them most of his... He was searching for a new way of seeing. The camera was a thing to be explored in seeking that vision. Studying the work of photographers, tinkering with the camera himself, Degas concluded, to record the instant is photography, and nothing more. But the painter brought to his art his feelings about the truth of that second. Still, a painting could never be just an instant in time to Degas. It was an artificial work existing outside nature, and it requires as much cunning as the perpetration of a crime. Nothing in art must look like an accident, not even motion. Still searching for his special way of seeing, Degas studied the effects of light. He wrote in his diary, "Work a great deal with the effects of evening. Lamps, candles. The provocative thing is not to show the source of light, but the effect of light." Can it be said that the painter is found in the painted? Is it Degas' own melancholy, his wariness and withdrawal, which we see in his portraits? Melancholy and self-doubt haunted him, and nothing offered relief. Neither wealth nor the privileges of aristocratic birth, not even the gaiety of Paris. By his own admission, the most satisfying time of his life came early in his career, in Italy, where he painted portraits of his titled relatives. Not many years later came personal tragedy, the knowledge that he was slowly going blind. His cousin, Madame Renée Degas, knew only too well his sorrow. for an illness had taken her sight. As the years went on, Degas turned more and more to gouache and pastel. His subjects were dancers, figures so intensely observed when his sight was clear. His ability to see, at least with his inner eye, never left him. I thought there would always be time. What I did not do, what I was prevented from doing, I never, even in the middle of my worries, and in spite of my sick eyes, despaired of being able to do again. Some beautiful morning.
Someone said of me, Renoir, never any serious painting, always enjoying himself. Well, enjoying yourself isn't so bad. Consider the Greeks, for instance, wonderful people. Their life was so happy that they imagined the gods came down to earth to find heaven and love. Earth was heaven for the gods. That's what I want to paint.
France, the late 19th century. Auguste Renoir reflects on the art of painting.
Don't ask me if painting should be objective or subjective. There are those who give me reasons for putting red here and blue there in such and such a part of my canvas. I swear these arguments drive me crazy. I'm always scared when young painters come to my house and ask me about the purpose of art. Painting is a difficult art. All the same, what we need is a little simplicity and honesty. It's hard to make people admit that a painting can be very great art and still be gay. People who laugh are not taken seriously.
But now, listen to me. Painting is intended to decorate walls. As far as I'm concerned, it should be pleasant, joyous, and beautiful. Yes, beautiful. There are enough boring things in life without our having to create still more.
Painting is not daydreaming. It's manual labor, and it takes a good workman to do it well. Of course, it's not enough for a painter to be a clever craftsman. He must love to caress his canvas, too. The model is only there to set me going. To permit me to dare things I should never have thought of inventing without her. And to put me on my feet again if I venture too far. I must say, I'm not hard to please. Provided I find a skin which doesn't repel the light, I can get on very well with the first dirty scamp who comes along. In painting, as in the other arts, there's not a single process which can be reasonably made into a formula. For instance, I tried long ago to measure out once and for all the amount of oil which I put in my color. I simply couldn't do it. I have to judge what I need with each dip of the brush. The scientific artists thought they had discovered a truth once they had learned that you juxtapose yellow and blue and it gives you violet shadows. But even when you know that, you still don't know anything. A good painting doesn't need any explanation. And there is something in painting which cannot be explained. And that something is essential.